Hello, everybody, and I am back today. I am going to be doing another episode of the Cosmic Weave. Before I get started, though, I am going to do an audio check. Find out, make sure everything's working. Go in on YouTube and make sure that this is actually in the proper playlist it has to be in, too. So, and while I'm there, I'll give it a thumbnail. Give it my thumbnail, I should say. It's basically the same one. There we go. It's in the pictures. Got to get that all sorted out. Okay, so there we go. Test the audio. There we go. Sounds good on YouTube. I'm just going to go with that today. I have to do the Cosmic Wave, and right now I'm setting it up on Rumble. Just check YouTube. I'm not going to go over to DLive or anything. I just want to be able to get through this and be done with it for the year. So I'm having some issues right now, personal issues with the house. It sounds good on Rumble. So with that, I can get started. I'm having some issues, like I was saying, at the house right now. So I am kind of in a time right now where I have to really worry about when I'm on the internet and when I'm not on the internet. So let me get this started, do my countdown, and we'll get going. So here we go. 3, 2, 1, now. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the final episode for this year, 2025, of the Cosmic Weave. Before we get started, I'd like to thank everybody for showing up, and I will be your host, Roger Hanson, and hopefully we can get through this and it will be pretty good. Now, last week I was talking more on the philosophical, historical society side of things, but today I'm going to get more into the scientific approach when it comes to this stuff and then go in that direction. And that'll be the final episode for this year. So that's fine though. Next year, hopefully, I can come back with some more stuff if I can wrap my head around the stuff. It didn't work out exactly the way I thought it would. When I first started this project, I thought I had everything pretty much figured out on how I was going to do this and how it was going to play out. But as I went through this, it became very, very complicated for me. Not only was it hard for me to actually write out on the computer, but saying it, being able to comprehend it and then pass it on, by saying it. That became an issue as well. This is really, really complex um, theory, I guess you could say. It really is. Um, I am interested in it, but I do have to say it is very, very complicated. I thought it would be a lot easier than what it has been. So, with that being said, took a drink of my coffee, and now it's time to get to the the reading. So here we go. Waveform shapes relate to neuroplasticity, particularly in how the brain perceives, processes, and adapts to auditory inputs over time. Although a waveform is a physical representation of a sound showing its amplitudes, which is intensity, over time, it shapes carriers crucial information about the sound source, tone, timbre, rhythm, and meaning. The brain's ability to interpret these shapes and to modify its neural circuits in response to them is a clear example of neuroplasticity in action. When sound waves enter the ear, they are converted into electrical signals by the cochlea and transmitted to the auditory cortex. The unique shape of a waveform, its peaks, troughs, rapid changes, and steady patterns translates into distinct patterns of neural activity. For example, a shape waveform with abrupt changes may signal a percussive sound like a clap or drum hit, while a smooth, sinusoidal waveform might correspond to a sustained musical note or a vowel sound. Neuroplasticity is involved in how the brain learns to recognize, interpret, and become more efficient at processing these shapes. A child learning language, for instance, is exposed to thousands of examples of speech waveform. The brain gradually adapts by strengthening the connections that recognize the subtle differences between similar sounding phonemes. The precise timing, pitch, variation, and harmonic content, all expressed through waveform shape, become encoded in specialized neural circuits. Over time, with repeated exposure, the brain can more quickly and accurately identify these patterns. In music, a trained musician's brain becomes more sensitive to the unique waveforms of different instruments, rhythms, or harmonic textures. This sensitivity is not innate, but is developed through repeated exposure and practice, illustrating the brain's plasticity to adapt to the acoustic structure of sound. Similarly, individuals who suffer hearing loss and receive cochlear implants often experience gradual improvement in sound interpretation as their brains adapt to the new types of auditory waveform inputs. Waveform shape also plays a role in emotional perception of sound. Human voices carry emotional tone through changes in waveform contour, such as vibrato, intensity shifts, or irregular breaks. Through neuroplastic adaptation, the brain becomes better at recognizing these features and associating them with emotions like anger, joy, sadness, or sarcasm. This is especially evident in individuals with heightened emotional sensitivity to tone, or in therapies that train people with autism or auditory processing disorders to recognize emotional cues in voice. Furthermore, the brain's ability to differentiate between similar waveform shapes is central to critical listening and discrimination tasks. For example, distinguishing between syllables ba and pa, rely on detecting very slight variations in the waveform's timing and shape. The refinement of these discriminative skills is a direct consequence of experience-driven changes in auditory pathways. In the brain, oscillation or oscillations refer to rhythmic patterns of neural activity, measurable as brain waves that reflect how groups of neurons communicate and synchronize with each other over time. These oscillations occur at different frequencies, such as delta, theta, alpha, beta, and gamma, each associated with different mental states like sleep, attention, learning, or memory. Neuroplasticity, on the other hand, refers to the brain's ability to adapt, rewire, and strengthen neural pathways in response to experience, learning, and environmental demands. The two are deeply interconnected. Oscillatory activity plays a critical role in timing and coordination across different brain regions. For neuroplastic changes to take place, such as the strengthening or weakening of synapses, the timing of neural firing must be precise. Oscillations provide this temporal structure. For example, when neurons fire in sync during a gamma oscillation cycle, they are more likely to influence one another and form lasting connections. This synchronization is necessary for processes like long-term potentiation, a mechanism thought to underlie learning and memory. Furthermore, brain rhythms help determine what information gets processed, stored, or discarded. During focused attention, for instance, oscillations in the beta and gamma range become more prominent, creating ideal conditions for synaptic change. Conversely, during rest or sleep, slower rhythms such as delta and theta support consolidation of memories and integration of new learning, both products of neuroplasticity. Learning a new skill, such as a language or musical instrument, alters the patterns of oscillation in relevant brain areas. Over time, these new rhythms reinforce pathways that are repeatedly activated, showing a dynamic interaction between rhythmic synchronization and the restructuring of neural circuits. Similarly, meditation and cognitive training can change oscillatory patterns, which in turn support neuroplastic improvements in attention, self-regulation, and sensory processing. In disorders where plasticity is impaired, such as in schizophrenia, autism, or some forms of brain injury, disruptions in normal oscillatory patterns are often observed. This further supports the idea that healthy oscillations are essential for effective neuroplastic changes. In artificial intelligence, especially in neuromorphic computing and spiking neural networks, oscillation, like timing mechanisms, are often built into models to simulate how the brain's timing structure influences learning. These systems attempt to mimic not just the architecture of the brain, but also the temporal flow of information that underpins adaptive changes. Feature extraction in artificial intelligence relates conceptually to neuroplasticity in the human brain, especially when we compare how both systems identify, emphasize, and adapt to important patterns in incoming sensory information over time. In artificial intelligence, feature extraction refers to the process of identifying the most relevant attributes or components from raw data. In this case, sound, images, or language that are useful for making decisions, classifications, or predictions. For example, in audio processing, feature extraction might involve isolating characteristics such as pitch, tone, formants, or temporal patterns from a speech signal. These features are used by machine learning models to understand spoken words, detect emotion, or classify sounds. In the brain, neuroplasticity allows for a similar kind of adaptive filtering and representation. When you hear a sound repeatedly or focus on a certain type of auditory input, like a foreign language, a musical instrument, or someone's voice, your brain begins to rewire itself to better perceive, distinguish, and interpret those sounds. Neurons adjust their firing patterns, synapses strengthen or weaken, and entire networks reconfigure based on the importance or frequency of particularly auditory features. Over time, your brain gets better at extracting the meaningful elements from noise, much like a feature extractor in AI. Both systems prioritize relevance. In AI, feature extraction reduces complex raw input into a set of key variables that the model can use efficiently. In the brain, neuroplasticity supports a parallel function, highlighting and reinforcing pathways associated with useful or frequently encountered stimuli, while diminishing those less relevant. For example, a native speaker of a tonal language like Mandarin will have neural pathways especially attuned to pitch variations in a linguistic cue, something their brain has prioritized through repeated exposure and plastic reorganization. Similarly, AI trained on tonal language data will learn to treat pitch contours as critical features of recognition. In tasks like speech on no, in tasks like speech or music perception, the connection becomes even more direct. Both biological and artificial systems rely on detecting transitions in sound, identifying rhythm patterns, and recognizing spectral shapes, all of which are derived through feature extraction in AI and learning through neural tuning and plasticity in the brain. Another parallel is the capacity to adapt based on error. In AI, learning algorithms adjust how features are interpreted by analyzing performance errors and updating internal parameters. Neuroplasticity reflects a biological equivalent, where the brain changes in response to mismatches between expectation and input. This error-driven adjustment helps both systems become more accurate and efficient with experience. Time domain signals. relate to neuroplasticity, particularly when considering how the brain processes and adapts to patterns in sensory input over time. A time domain signal represents how a waveform, such as a sound, light, or electrical signal, changes over time. In neuroscience and signal processing, this is a foundational way to observe and analyze how information unfolds subsequently, moment by moment, with, which directly reflects how the brain receives and interprets stimuli. In the context of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to adapt is deeply tied to its interpretation of temporal patterns. For example, in hearing and speech perception, the brain receives auditory signals in the time domain, such as the rise and fall of pitch, duration of syllables, and the pacing of speech. These patterns are essential for distinguishing between phonemes, understanding language, and identifying emotional tone. Over repeated exposure, the brain refines its interpretation of these time-based patterns by rewriting neural pathways to become more efficient. A clear example of plasticity in response to time domain input. When learning a new language or musical instrument, the temporal features of the input, rhythm, speed, pauses, and timing are critical. The brain detects and adapts to these temporal cues, creating stronger connections between neurons that process time sensitive information. No, that process time sensitive information. This tuning process reflects how time domain signal characteristics can directly influence neural structure and function. Moreover, in motor learning, such as playing a sport or typing, the brain must process and anticipate time domain signals related to motion and coordination. Neuroplasticity allows for refinement of these skills by reinforcing pathways that align with successful timing and sequencing, such as when to swim a bat, or such as when to swing a bat or hit a piano key. The brain's motor cortex, basal ganglia, and cerebellum are especially involved in learning these time-sensitive patterns. Even in vision, the brain relies on time domain signals to detect motion, anticipate trajectory, and make sense of dynamic scenes. For instance, catching a ball or reading lips both require understanding fast changing visual inputs over time. The plastic adaptation to this temporal flow through repeated experience helps refine perception and response accuracy. In the field of brain-computer interfaces and neural signal processing, time domain analysis is frequently used to monitor brain activity like electroencephalographs or grams, which is EEGs. These signals observed in the time domain reveal the brain's oscillations, evoke potentials, and other patterns that can change with learning, attention, or rehabilitation. Again, tying time domain features directly to neuroplastic change. Frequency domains relate to neuroplasticity in important and measurable ways, while time domain signals represent how a stimulus or neural signal changes over time. Frequency domain analysis reveals the underlying component of that signal in terms of how often they repeat, its oscillatory or rhythmic content. In the brain, this corresponds directly to neural oscillations, also known as brain waves, which play a key role in coordinating activity, communication, and adaptive change across neural networks. Neural oscillation occurs at different frequency ranges, such as delta, which is the slowest, theta, alpha, beta, and gamma, which is the fastest, each associated with distinct cognitive states. For example, theta rhythms are prominent during deep sleep and memory consolidation, theta during focused attention and learning, alpha in relaxed alertness, and beta during active thinking and problem solving, and gamma during perception and conscious thinking and problem solving. Wait, no. And gamma during perception and conscious awareness. These frequency patterns reflect how the brain synchronizes actively across different regions and timescales. Neuroplasticity occurs when these patterns shift in response to experience, learning, or environmental stimuli. As the brain encounters new experiences, its frequency domain characteristics change. For example, when someone is learning a new language or training in meditation, researchers can observe changes in the balance and coherence of different frequency bands, particularly in the regions most engaged by the activity. These changes are not random, they are part of the brain's adaptive strategy to optimize signal flow effectively or no efficiently and integration efficiency and integration. These changes are not random, they are part of the brain's adaptive strategy to optimize signal flow efficiency and integration, reflecting plastic reorganization of neural circuits. Frequency domain activity also governs spike timing and synaptic plasticity. Neurons that fire in rhythmic synchrony within certain frequency bands are more likely to form or strengthen connections. This is known as spike timing dependent plasticity, a core mechanism of learning at the synaptic level. The frequencies at which these neurons oscillate essentially set the windows for when plasticity is most likely to occur, giving oscillation a structural influence on brain wiring. Sleep is another domain where frequency and neuroplasticity are closely linked. During non-REM sleep, slow wave activity in the delta band is believed to help consolidate and reorganize memories, strengthening the neural pathways that were activated during the day. This frequency specific activity supports learning and retention, showing how rhythmic signals guide the plasticity restructuring of memory networks. In therapies for brain injuries or neurological disorders, frequency targeted approaches such as neural feedback and transcranial stimulation attempt to entrain specific oscillatory patterns to promote beneficial plasticity. For example, enhancing alpha and theta activities in certain regions can support attention and emotional regulation, particularly in those with ADHD and PTSD or anxiety. A spectrogram is a visual representation that shows how the frequency content of a signal changes over time, essentially combining the time domain and frequency domain into a single view. This is particularly useful when analyzing complex signals like human speech, music, or brain activity, where the frequency components vary continuously as the signal progresses. To understand how the spectrogram works, imagine a sound wave or electrical signal being sliced into short, overlapping time segments. Each of these segments is then analyzed using a mathematical tool, usually a Fourier transform, which decomposes the signal into a signal into its component frequencies. For every slice, the spectrogram calculates the intensity or amplitude of each frequency present within that window. It then assigns a color or brightness level to represent the strength of each frequency at each moment in time. The horizontal axis of the spectrogram represents time, showing the sequence of the signal from the beginning to end. The vertical axis represents frequency, with lower frequencies near the bottom and higher frequencies at the top. The color or intensity of the color and or intensity at each point on this grid corresponds to how strong a particular frequency is at that particular moment. Brighter or more intense colors indicate higher energy or louder presence of that frequency, while darker areas show lower energy or silence. In practical terms, a spectrogram allows us to see patterns that would be difficult or impossible to detect by just looking at a waveform in the time domain. For example, in speech analysis, the spectrogram reveals how vowel sounds, consonants, and syllables differ by their frequency patterns. Each phoneme has a unique frequency signal that evolves over time, which is crucial for both human understanding and machine processing of languages. In music, the spectrogram shows harmonic structures, changing in pitch and the onset of notes. which help identify instruments or tune accuracy. In neuroscience, spectrograms are used to analyze brain signals such as EEGs. During different mental states, the brain produces characteristic frequency patterns. A spectrogram allows researchers to track how these rhythms, delta, theta, alpha, beta, gamma, emerge, fade, or interact in response to cognitive tasks or environmental changes. This makes it easier to study neuroplasticity because one can observe how learning or therapy modifies these patterns over time. Neural patterns, especially convolutional neural networks, which are CNNs, can be trained to analyze spectrograms in much the same way they process images, detecting patterns that correspond with phenomena, um, words, or environmental sounds. Other features may Other features that may be extracted include zero crossing rates at the rate in which the signal changes sign, and there's short time energy, which relates or reflects volume fluctuations. Then you have pitch tracking. That's to capture uh, intonation. After that, there's formants uh, that resonates frequencies in speech. Now, for tasks like speaker identification, features such as voice pitch, speaking rate, and unique spectral signatures are extracted to distinguish one individual from another. Syntactic parsing, also known as syntactic analysis or syntax parsing, is a key process in natural language processing, which is usually NLP basically. And that involves analyzing the grammatical structure of a sentence to determine how words are grouped and related to each other. The goal is to create a structured representation, often in the form of a tree, that shows how the components of a sentence, such as nouns, verbs, adjectives, and phrases, relate to one another according to the rules of grammar. At its core, breaks at its core it breaks down a sentence into its parts of speech and identifies the grammatical role these parts play, such as subject, predicate, object, modifier, etc. This structure allows machines to understand not just the words in a sentence, but the relationship between those words, which is essential for interpreting meaning, resolving ambiguity, and performing more advanced NLP tasks like question answering, machine translation, and summarization. A core process in natural language processing that involves analyzing the grammatical structure of a system. The main goal is to determine how the words in a sentence relate to one another, both in terms of their parts of speech, such as nouns, verbs, adjectives, etc., and their hierarchical roles in forming meaning. This process is essential for machines to move beyond simple keyword matching and begin to understand language in a way that more closely mirrors human comprehension. There are two main types of syntactic parsing. That's constituency parsing and dependency parsing. Constituency parsing breaks down a sentence into nested subphrases, reflecting the traditional grammatical hierarchy seen in former linguistic studies. For example, in the sentence, "The cat sat on the mat," constituency parsing would identify the cat as a noun phrase and "on the mat" as a propositional phrase, modifying "sat." Each of these units is then connected within a tree structure to show how they come together to form the full sentence. Dependency parsing focuses on the relationship between individual words rather than grouping them into phrases. It identifies which words depend on others to derive meaning. The verb is often considered the central word, and all other words are linked to it based on grammatical roles. For example, in the sentence, "She gave him a book," dependency parsing show that "gave" is the main verb, "she" is the subject, "him" is the indirect object, and a book is the direct object, all connected through directional links. Now, after that, you would go into parsing algorithms, which is something that I'm not going to cover, but I can tell you that it has to do with the parsing tree and the syntax tree. And those are very interesting that you should check out if you're interested in anything that I've mentioned just now. Now, this tree like diagrams, or these tree like diagrams that I've just mentioned, visually represents the relationship among words and phrases, showing how smaller units of language combine to form larger ones, like nouns, phrases, or verb phrases. Noun phrases or verb phrases. Complex or ambiguous commands, contextual dependencies, which involve semantic analysis. That would be Viterbi algorithm. That's an important thing. Now, this has to do with efficiently finding the optimal path through the state space by maximizing the joint probability of the sequence. So, in the context of speech and audio signal processing, we want to go into HMMs, and they serve as a foundational method for modeling sequences of observable events that are generated by underlying unobservable or hidden states. Now, this makes them particularly well suited for recognizing patterns in time series data, like spoken language. What makes the model hidden is that while the actual sequence of states, no, while the actual sequences of states the system moves through is not directly observable, the output of each state what we do observe provides clues about which states were likely involved. That would bring us to the Baum-Welsh algorithm, expectation, maximization. That's EM algorithms, which uh, iteratively improves estimates of the model parameters to maximize the likelihood of the training data. HMMs make simplifying assumptions such as the independence of observations giving a state and the use of fixed Gaussian distributions to model acoustic features. Okay, so I have sat and done as the all of it. I've got it all down there now. I really did want to write this stuff out, but what I had to do is basically go off my notes for a lot of the stuff on here. It got pretty hectic for me when it came to doing this series because I wanted to write it out in my own words. And like I said at the beginning, it became a lot harder than what I thought it would be. It wasn't just complicated writing the stuff out and um, making it sound just normal. You know what I mean? But then once I had what I had written out, you know, saying it became even more of a complicated issue too. And I know that sounds really weird, but it's not really that weird at all once you're doing it, you know. And like I said, when I first started doing this series, I honestly thought uh, I had it all planned out on how I wanted to present this, and it really didn't come out the way I had expected it to. This is a very, very complex, uh, very complex subject. Period. I did learn quite a bit about it. You know, like I said in the beginning, I didn't really comprehend a lot of this inside of my head until I started doing, you know, the show that me and Bob did together, Duality, and that's when things started making sense. I'd already gotten interested in the whole concept of the cosmic weave and the cosmic egg theories, and that also uh, goes into parapsychology. You know, when you hear people talking about remote viewing and things of that nature, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about this, and I've mentioned it a few times in the series too, where when you see shows, usually documentaries that involve paranormal or UFO stories, like Ancient Aliens is the perfect example. Okay, you'll see parts where they show the human brain and they start talking about certain aspects of the mind. That's usually when they're bringing up the topic of the cosmic weave or the cosmic egg theories, which they are two separate ones. But that's usually what it is. But I've also said, you know, that this is probably the most popular, unpopular subject when it comes to those topics. Because even though it's good enough to use this stuff as material for your documentary or what your point you're trying to get, not too many people want to make complete episodes on this topic. You know what I mean? They want to break it down and say, okay, this can be used here and this can be used here, but it doesn't need to be here. So it becomes basically a filler for explaining things. You know what I mean? And when I started doing this, that's what I wanted to do. I just wanted to create episodes that specifically talked about this subject and try to do it in a way that was easy to comprehend, which it did not come out to be anything that could be comprehended. So I do apologize about that. I got confused myself. I think I might have actually repeated a lot of things. Not quite sure. I might go back over my streams and find out for myself, but I think I did. And it got so hectic for me while I was doing all of this too that I actually forgot to post last week's episode of the Cosmic Weave on Strange Stories, but I got that taken care of today. And wait, no, it was the one before that, or yeah, it was the one before that, and then this next one that I was supposed to have posted last week. I still had it, and I was going to put that one in. So that's basically how confusing all of it ended up getting, because life is confusing for me at the moment, and I'm working it out, getting everything organized. Um, Now on YouTube, we have Eric Croce, the knower, and he said, Bosto and great favor to all. Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. I believe so. Don't know exactly what that means, but I will use the translator and figure it out. Let me. I'll do that later. I'm in the middle of a live stream, but thank you for your comment, and I really really do appreciate it. Thank you very much. Um, and we've, we've had a couple that was our comment on there. I would go in and check out the other ones. But like I said, today I'm only going to focus on doing Rumble and YouTube. I've had some issues with my electricity in the last 4 or 5 days, and I'm at the point now where I have to watch exactly how much use I put into my computer, to be honest with you, because anything happen, I've had the entire south side of the house freaking go out because of a power surge, and we've been having to compensate by using all of the electricity on the north side of the house for the stuff that's on the south side, and so that means we've had to do a lot of changing around, using extension cords, things of that nature. So that's just one of many things that's been causing me some issues, and I'm getting that taken care of right now. So I'm really lucky to actually be on the internet today, to be honest with you. Um, that's how crazy it is. Like, I'm actually using a charger um, to charge my router so that it stays running, and I charge one, and then I put the other one on the on the router, and then when that one gets ready to run out, I'll switch them out. That's how serious it's getting at the house right now. So um, I don't know. Just to let you guys know, not until we get this fixed, there might be times where I'm not going to be able to come out with a show. I don't know yet. So now this is the last episode for this year of the Cosmic Weave. I'm not going to make any guarantees if I bring it back next year or not, because of how crazy it's been just doing the first season, the first 12 episodes. But if I do, it will be next year. I do 12 episodes a year. Now, after this one, I already have planned for the next episodes that are coming out in place of this one, and that is going to be new episodes for the cut. Now, the old or the shorter 15-minute episodes that I've had going with the cut, was old videos that I had from way back when that I wanted to try to preserve. So what I did is I edited them out and made sure that they were the ones that are able to be used. You know what I mean? There was a lot of them because back when I first started, I had bad video and audio quality. Didn't know much about the mics or using a lot of stuff, so I didn't do that great of a job. And I had to go through, sort them out. And once I sorted them out, I made 15-minute videos of them. This is way back whenever I was just starting out, you know. So that's what's going on there. Now, these are going to be brand new episodes, and they're going to relate to things that I couldn't use in video series like this, or things um, that I haven't or I wanted to bring, you know, things like that that I wanted to use, but they just didn't fit anywhere. Also, you know, things that were cut in history, you know, things that people really don't know about. You know, there's a few things that I do want to do in there, and I also want to kind of get into the science thing, but at the same time, here in the near future, after tomorrow with my conspiracy videos, because they're coming to an end too. After that, I'm going to be coming out with uh, my weird science episodes. So I finally decided to do that. I was debating if I was going to do it or not because, um, being honest, I ran out of my old weird science stuff that I wanted to use in some of the topics. Like I used them in Strange Stories, I believe. I used some of them about the Mad Doctors, um, things like that. So this time around, it's going to be new information, new stories, and I'm going to be bringing them out after I do conspiracy. I finish that off tomorrow, so we got some good stuff coming, and I've got all of the information ready to go, and yeah, we'll be good to go when it comes to that. So, with that being said, I'd like to thank everybody for watching and listening. If you did like what you heard, please like, subscribe, share, make comments, give some feedback. I especially love the comments. And thanks again, Eric Krause, or Croyce, however you say your last name. I apologize if I mispronounced it. Thanks for your comment. He has in parentheses the knower. So thank you very much. And I am on Rumble, I'm on YouTube, and I am also on X as Roger Hanson at ROGLOL1973. If you guys want to reach out and send me a message, you can do it there. I also put my videos on there and I live stream on there as well. I'm on Twitch as well as Infamous 1969, and I am on Kick as well as on DLive as Roger underscore Hanson. And that's where you can find me. I hope you guys did enjoy. I hope you have a good day, good night, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time of the day it is for you. I hope you enjoy it. And with that, I'm going to end the stream. Maybe I should talk a little bit longer so I can get that extra 45 seconds and make it a 1 hour video. Because that's what I'm really good at. I've figured it out that I'm really, really good at talking. So if I just start saying stuff like I'm going to end the show, but I really don't end the show because I'm just trying to waste time, in order to get an hour's worth of video, then then that's what I'm really good at, and people don't really like that. I don't know why. See you guys later.